Hola, mi gente. I'm Brandi Amara Skyy. I am a wild dream coach, and I am here to help folks like you do things that feel or are impossible. And this is your monthly Tarotscope for April 2024. And this one is rolling in a little bit late because been I've been in like this glow up, right? And I feel like a lot of the people in the woke magic orbit in mi gente are all very in this um almost next level, like reaching to the next level phase of themselves. And so I really want us to take a collective moment, and that can show up in any way, right? This isn't just like it's a very linear way of transforming. Transformation is cyclical, it's spiralic, it is a labyrinth, it is messy, it's chaotic, and whatever that little bit is showing up for you, honor it. And I say this because this month was really heavy astrologically. We had the solar eclipse in Aries. We also have a Mercury retrograde when I'm recording this. And then, we had all of these other little big major things. And the card for this month is a longtime friend of mine. Our card for April is the Justice card. And I've done a lot of internal work and external work and sharing about this particular card. And I even did a podcast, Tarot Heroes, and I specifically spoke about this card, which I will link in the description below. And so I really wanted to do this monthly Tarotscope a little bit differently because I've put out so much about this card because I have a very deep relationship with this card, with the sign of Libra, and I feel like there may not be right now anything more to add to that body of work that I've created for justice right now. And so, what I really felt called to do this month is talk about the practicality of how our monthly cards can show up in our life and how we can use the energy and the archetype and the connections of the card of the month and really kind of draw them down into our life in very tangible but also metaphysically transformative ways. And this is a very like Librian thing, right? Which is the zodiac sign that is associated with justice, right? At some point we have to find our own equilibrium. We have to find our own balance. And when I say balance, and I speak about this and I talk about this in my with my one-on-one clients, when I am speaking about balance, I am not talking about the kind of static balance, this unrealistic like half and half, like split down the middle kind of balance, right? I'm talking about dynamic balance, that the tension that has to happen for something to remain in a state of balance, right? The push and pull, the contraction and the expansion. And I always go to, when I think of balance and I talk about balance and I talk about justice, I always harken back to a ballerina. So I'm a trained dancer. I've done ballet, I've done jazz, and in ballet, and if you are observing a ballerina, especially on point shoes, it appears like the body and the person dancing on point and balancing on point, it appears from the outside to be effortless, right? We see this amazing dancer and they are on the tippy top point of their shoe, and it just all seems to be very kind of easeful. But what's happening in the body of that dancer is there's a tightening, right? There's a constriction into the center. There's a tightening of the center. There's a pulling up. There's a line of energy that shoots straight down from the ground into the toe that draws itself completely up. There is a contraction that's happening of pulling all of the dancer's body's energy like into them, while also shifting and lifting up and out and holding themselves in alignment with their center, and their center in alignment with their toe, and their toe in alignment with gravity. There's all of these things that are happening, and neurons and synapses that are firing off to make what appears on the outside to be very easeful, to be balance. There's a dynamic thing that's happening. And so when I speak about balance, especially in our orbit, especially in any of the containers that you may be in with me, I'm speaking about that kind of balance. I'm speaking about a dynamic balance that is not static, that is in a constant state of motion, because we know that when something is no longer in motion, it dies, right? Energy dies. And so, or it doesn't die, it transforms into something else, but you know what I mean. So in relationship to this card, we all at some point get to a moment in our life where we have to find a dynamic balance for ourselves. Whether that dynamic balance, it can look like so many other things. I'm going to use myself as an example. One of the things that I have been what has been on my scales, what I've been kind of weighing, what I've been teetering on, and the balance that I've been trying to find for myself is the balance between the author and this artist that now needs a more quiet, solitary, soulless kind of place to create, but also this fire breathing, ball of energy that has been a performer and outward facing and loves to connect with people and loves to be in the thick of things and to be on stage and to make these radical connections. And I have been these last couple of years trying to find that balance, right? I went from fully on stage as a drag queen and performing all the time to like the opposite complete end. We moved I lived in Dallas and I lived in the thick of everything. And then we moved to Wimberley, and it is a quiet, small, slower paced town. I live on 5 acres and it's just space all around, and there's a lot of just quiet time. And I went to the other extreme, so I completely hermited, which is my life path card. So I completely hermited. And so like I was here holding the tension of the extremes, my former life over here and who I am becoming here. And not who I'm become, but who I am. And I got to a point where I'm like, I feel like something's missing. And what was missing was this other side of the scale that I have been for 40 out of 46 years of my life, maybe even 43. And so I was trying to rebalance and find that balance back in myself. And what I came to the conclusion is that who I am right now, right? The dynamic balance, this person that I am, this person that I'm growing into is no longer either or, right? I am no longer just this side of the scale I'm weighing, or this side of the scale I'm weighing, right? I'm no longer that. I am the actual like bridge that tethers and holds these two in place, meaning that for the next level, for me to get to the next level, for me to find that dynamic balance in my life, I need both. I need to have both the moment of being with myself to create, to think, to dream up, but also to be in community and be on stage and sign books and talk about my work and just be in collaboration with other people. I need the both and. And when we're looking at justice, particularly in this month, I want you to start thinking about, what does that dynamic balance look like for you? What is it that you've been trying to hold on opposite ends, when really what we should be feeling into is what connects and what is actually the thing that is going to balance the two. And so the invitation for justice for this month is, in order for us to perpetuate or to fight for or to be in alignment with justice for others and for our environment and for our life, we first have to be in attunement and congruency with justice for ourselves. We have to do ourselves justly, because how we treat ourselves is going to be reflected in how we treat others. And if we are not filling our own cup, if we are not putting on our own oxygen mask first, if we are not seeing how our own lives are built more in the space in between, in the Nepantla, in the liminal versus the extremities, we cannot expect ourselves to see that in a world outside of us, or to treat others in that space of grace, of the benefit of the doubt, of not being this and this only, but being this, and then this, and then this, right? And I've been sitting with justice in this way this month, because this is a card, again, like I said, that I've worked with a whole lot. And my question for myself is, okay, so what is this deeper invitation for justice in me? And what would it look like for me to be in radical justice with myself as I am, and as I'm actively participating and wanting and speaking radical justice in our systems, in our world, in, our in-between communities. And so when you're moving through the rest of April, and I actually kind of find it magical that I'm recording this pretty much smack dab in the middle of April versus the beginning or the end, the lesson here is how can we be more in this Nepantla? How can we be more in the space between extremities, between the getting to where we want to go and where we are, from the very beginning to the end destination? How can we be more in the cracks? How can we be more of the actual dynamic lever that houses and holds the scales versus the scales themselves? And a lot of that comes back to, and will always come back to, knowing yourself. And knowing yourself in an intimate, uncomfortable, and radically inclusive holistic way. So as we move through the rest of April, I want to invite you to move forward with the question of, what is dynamic balance for me? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What is it inclusive of? What is it exclusive of, right? What does that even mean for me? What is my example of dynamic justice? Just for dynamic justice, that too. What is my example of dynamic balance? And like I shared the ballerina, what is it for you? And then why not? What would a dynamic justice look like for ourselves and for others? A justice that is nuanced, that is holistic, that is inclusive, that is metaphysical, that is magical, that is internal and external, that is both and also all. And then how can we begin to, whatever the answers are, and whatever, living in the question versus seeking answers thing, whatever it is that we're jostling with, we're playing with, we're experimenting with in that question, how can that then be funneled into particular areas in our life? Whether that is how we tend to ourselves, how we treat ourselves, how we speak to ourselves, and noticing how when we shift the way that we communicate and become just to ourselves, how does that organically reflect how we interact with others? What is that connection? And then how can we do more of that on purpose? Right? Because it's one thing to experiment. It's one thing to play. It's one thing to ask questions about dynamic balance and dynamic justice. But it's a whole nother energy to actually live in that. And as we move into the sun in Taurus and soon the moon in Taurus, there's a really beautiful invitation to ground all of this in our earthly, in our 3D plane. And so thinking about, how could this new relationship with justice, this new relationship with dynamic balance, how can this be implemented, integrated, and embodied in your life? Practical example of how I've been integrating my my both and of the quiet and the need for, I immediately go to the need for speed, my need for the stage, is I am gifting myself time here to do this, but then I'm also actively seeking out opportunities and experiences that put me in the thick of the stage of life. Not necessarily on stage where I'm absolutely most comfortable, but on the stage of life. And this last Saturday, I did my first book signing at the San Antonio Books Festival. And I knew right then and there that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I wanted to create, I wanted to share it, and then I wanted to talk to people and hug people and make people smile and have people smile back and be in relationship to the art with other people. And I knew that that was one side. That was a side that had been missing. And I had been seeking it out on actual stages, what I am so accustomed to being on. And it shifted to the stage of life. And so the invitation for you is to notice, fully embrace love, and remember and know who the fuck you are, but also be open to seeing how How is it wanting to shift, right? It's not about evolving out of something, right? I'm never going to evolve out of being a performer. I'm never going to evolve being out of a person who throws cautions to the wind and just leaps, right? I'm never going to evolve out of that. I'm going to carry that with me. And that with me, together, we are going to evolve into a different version of the same tune, a different instrument in a symphony, a different iteration of the same story, right? And so looking at where that's true for you, because part of justice, part of freedom, part of liberation for all is allowing ourselves on a personal level to be in a continual, constant state of evolution that doesn't forfeit or forget everything that we've been before, but stewards that in and alchemizes it into the medicine for the next iteration, avatar, tipping of the scale that we're going to be. And the invite is to get deep, to go deep, to see how radical, dynamic, balance, and justice show up in your life, and move forward knowing that you are always supported, even when it doesn't feel like it. All right, friends. So I'm going to drop in the links below in the description some of the work that and podcast and things that I've done around justice if you want more of a traditional reading. But if you're here watching this channel, you're unconventional like me. Traditional is like, what's traditional? Fuck that. So I hope that this reading has landed in ways that you feel now and that will ripple out in the days, the weeks, the months to come. This is a major arcana card, which means that we won't get to the answer today, tomorrow, next week, maybe not even in a year. This is a big mystery, right? This is something that this is a mystery that we live into. We live into it through our daily choices. We live into it with our actions. We live into it with the questions and the things that we ask ourselves. And so this is a really, really big, kind of like lifelong spectrum conversation. So the caveat is, while this is the card of April 2024, the ideas, the energy, the questions, the praxis that you're going to be doing is a forever, lifelong journey. And the best advice I can give you for that is just enjoy the fucking ride. Enjoy the ride. All right, friends. I love you, and I will see you next month in Lakesh.